We've been working on this story for weeks, and we published this story on Friday over the weekend, and it's on what we call in the biz. Not like I'm really in the biz, but in the biz, it's called a slow burn. It's on a slow burn. It's still continuing to get traction as it goes out there. There is a $2.5 trillion transfer of wealth that's getting ready to happen in the United States of America. And with that, to tee it up, we're going to play some news clips.
A new report finds more than 14 million American households are currently at risk of eviction and have an estimated $25 billion in rental debt.
Far from the only one confronting this nightmare, America is on the verge of an eviction crisis.
An eviction crisis is looming. The moratorium is about to expire.
That order expires on December 31st. If it is not extended, 30 to 40 million Americans could lose their home.
Well, it is estimated more than 200,000 families here in California will each owe an average of about $7 grand in unpaid rent by Christmas.
There are people who, right after the December 31st expiration date, will be put out. They will be homeless.
The current moratorium on evictions doesn't prevent landlords from starting the filing process and proceedings.
The CDC's eviction moratorium is set to expire in just 3 weeks. Landlords throughout the process have continued to ask for help, while tenants fear more people could be out on the streets.
In Florida, more than 1 million renters have slight or no confidence in their ability to pay next month's rent.
So it's a pretty grim situation, and Congress continues to do nothing. If anything, the Republicans in the House have made it very clear that the biggest thing that they're interested in right now is destroying democracy and not helping the American people. So what we've teed up here, there's up to 40 million Americans, right? There's all these numbers that get kicked around. And one of the things that's lost in the translation is this 12 million number is thrown around a lot. But it's a number that we in our article and one of those news clips we had got correct. It is not 12 million people that are at risk of being evicted. It is 12 million households that are at risk of being evicted. On top of that, there are 6 million U.S. households that are on the brink of being foreclosed upon. 18 million households. That is more than 10% of the households of the United States that are on the brink. But there's more to the story. And with that, let's roll the next set of news clips, because we're going to glue this story all together for you.
Small landlords say they've reached a breaking point. Rent collection is down substantially, and California's eviction moratorium is set to expire at the end of January.
Landlords are finding it hard to fill buildings typically crammed with college students, and more than 10,000 apartments in Boston remain up for grabs. A major change for the once booming rental market, fueled by remote learning at some colleges and a shift to working from home.
Chances are, if you're a renter, you might have received an email like this: free rent for 2 months or even 3 months and free parking. Zillow experts say nearly 50% of Seattle Metro rental listings are offering some sort of concession.
Also tonight, rent prices across the Bay Area are plummeting, down nearly 24% in one city.
So we have this fascinating second piece of the puzzle. So the first piece of the puzzle is there are 12 million people, 12 million households that rent that are on the brink of being foreclosed upon. There are millions of American families today that owe more than $5,000 in rent. And remember, the eviction moratorium just kicks that rent due down the road. When the moratorium ends, these families need to pay up. Now, if they don't have the money to pay 1 month's rent, where are they going to come up with the money to pay 3 months' rent or 4 months' rent or 2 months' rent? So there is a catastrophe that's looming. But then there's a second piece of the puzzle, and we tee up this little bit of the story about small landlords. This is the hidden crisis, and we're going to talk more about that hidden crisis. Not talking about big corporate landlords. I'm talking about the small landlords, the people that owe 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 units. They bought a quadplex, or maybe they bought a couple of condos. And for them, that passive income is literally their income or their retirement money. And it goes further than they're not just getting rent. And the other thing that's crushing small landlords right now is in almost all cities across the United States. That's Dr. Mrs. Malcontent telling me goodnight. That's why you saw me turn around. In cities across the United States, rents are going down. Now we're going to add the third piece to this toxic soup.
Boise comes in at number 4 on Realtor.com's rankings of the top real estate markets for 2021, behind Sacramento, San Jose, and Charlotte, and just ahead of Seattle.
The Las Vegas real estate market is active as housing prices continue to rise across the valley.
The Sacramento median home price is now $440,000, a $55,000 jump from last year.
There's a high buyer demand.
We're at the early stages of really a monumental rise in home prices, and that we think it's going to be tremendous for the builders, particularly for their margins. And I think we're actually pretty much on the early end of this.
So, we have 12 million American families that are on the brink of being evicted. You have another 6 million American families who are on the brink of being foreclosed upon. You have declining rents across the United States of America, in most markets, not all markets, but in almost all markets. And to throw this in, house prices are rising rapidly across the United States. And yes, Mike Solon, despite your screed in front of the King County real estate agents, prices in Seattle are going up, and Seattle is not dying, and it's only gone up 7%. But as we showed in that clip, we're the 5th hottest real estate market in the country projected for 2021. And after being number 1 for years, I think being number 5 is okay. So what is going on here? Has the world gone nuts? Oh no, the world hasn't gone nuts. And Mitch McConnell is one of the ringmasters and one of the biggest wealth transfers that's getting ready to happen in United States history. And I have a big screen. I actually could really see your comments well tonight. So 2 things I want to address. We will talk about Manny Ellis at the end of the show. We have 9 stories tonight. So I'm not going to promise we'll get to Manny Ellis tonight, but I'm really going to try. We literally have 9 stories tonight, and we're only to story number 2. The other thing, how does this compare to the Great Depression? We're not as bad as the Great Depression. We have the potential to be as bad as the Great Recession. Now, that is from house ownership standpoint. From a rental standpoint, what we are seeing is unprecedented. So you have millions of people that are getting ready to be evicted. I think most people understand what's going on in that. You have 10 million Americans who lost their jobs. A lot of those people were in service level jobs or in industries, that have basically evaporated. So video production here. Hi, our industry is like on its knees right now. And you have entertainment, you have restaurants, you have bars, right? All of these service jobs are really down. The other thing is don't forget, U3 unemployment doesn't tell the whole story. There are millions and millions of Americans, for instance, in the story that's on malcontentnews.com. If you go to malcontentnews.com, you can read the story that we wrote about this wealth transfer. It was up on Friday. We interviewed a woman for that story. Her name is Gia, and Gia is only working at part of the capacity that she was at. So she is employed as far as unemployment numbers are concerned, but she is underemployed in reality. And so that is something that is hurting her. And this is one of the reasons why you have all these people that are up for eviction. And if the government does not step in before December 31 and do something, then the clock will start running for millions of American families. And in some states, the way the state, because evictions are handled at the state level, in some states, the filing of the paperwork has already begun. There's one other thing that's going to happen on December 31 if the federal government doesn't step in, and that is millions of Americans are going to lose extended unemployment benefits that are dependent upon, up to 12 million Americans. Now, it's a Venn diagram. Some of those people who are struggling to pay rent or mortgages are also in that group that are collecting unemployment, but it's not one-to-one. There are groups that are collecting unemployment or extended benefits, PUC or PUA, and they will lose it, and their income is going to go to zilch. So you have another group that will fall behind with no protections on them. Small landlords are getting killed because they're not getting paid for the rent. I'm not talking again about the people that own, a large corporation or a hedge fund that owns 20,000 units. because they got loans, they got help, they have money in the bank, they have lawyers, right? They have business managers to track all this. If you have a person like we interviewed for this story, Rich, who just bought a fourplex's retirement plan in November of 2019 and is suffering from a predatory loan to buy that property, Rick is going to lose his home here in January. He's going to lose everything, including his retirement. And so this is the hidden aspect of this, because understand, in the case of Rick, he bought a quadplex, 4-unit place with 4 families in there. One family moved out a couple of months after he bought it. 2 other families worked with him to move out because he needs to rehab the property to refinance it. 2 other families did cash for keys in June and moved out. There's a 4th family in there that's refused to move out. Now, when Rick starts to go into foreclosure, and in our interview with Rick, he just feels that that's an inevitability that will happen on January 4. That family that's in there, when that property is sold, guess what happens to that rental family? They're going to get evicted. And whatever corporation or investor buys that property, they're not going to care, because Rick has been trying to do the right thing. This is what I mean by small landlords. The other thing you have is as rent is going down, smaller landlords are collecting less money, but property values are going up. You know what else goes up when property values go up? Taxes and expenses. So if you're retired on a fixed income and you have 1, 2, 3, 4 rentals, and that is supplementing your fixed income, or that is your fixed income, you're getting crushed. But there's another aspect to this story. There's a term in the finance industry called dry powder. And dry powder is a banking expression for piles of cash just waiting to be spent on something. And at the start of 2020, there was $2.5 trillion in dry cash, or dry powder, I should say. Dry cash for that matter. Some estimates have dry powder now at $4 trillion, because for the people who have money, and for the hedge funds, and for the corporations, and for investors, there's been nothing to spend money on. So they're just sitting on piles of cash. Well, check this out. There's $2.5 trillion in dry powder. That's the minimum number, correct? The average value of an American house in the United States of America is $284,000. There are 12 million homes in the United States that will be up potentially for foreclosure or fire sale, essentially, sold at a loss or sold to get out from under. Gia and her husband are probably going to have to do that come the spring. That's what she told us. Again, you can read that story on Malcontent News. Guess what 284,000 times 12 million is? Yeah, $2.55 trillion. It's enough to make you go, isn't it? The only thing that's going to stop this freight train is Congress does their job and serves the American people and stops trying to destroy democracy and put a fascist in power for the rest of his life. Because make no mistake about it, although Donald Trump had a fork stuck in him today by the Electoral College, he also filed a lawsuit against the state of New Mexico, of all states, against their election results. And it's probably only a matter of time before they file lawsuits against states like Massachusetts or California or District of Columbia, where he had no chance at all. Because the end game at this point is not to actually win a court case. The end game now is to destroy American democracy. And the people that benefit that the most are the people that sit in Congress, because they're paid large stacks of dark money and PAC money to serve who they serve. And who they don't serve is us.